morning, Yvonne Taylor and Phil Gitlin. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Yvonne, of course, you are the plaintiff, and Phil, you are the attorney in a key case that right now is using the New York Green Amendment. It's the case called Seneca Lake Guardian et al., because there are others, versus Seneca Meadows and the New York Department of Environmental Conservation. I'm wondering if you can just help us give some context to our audience about what's going on. Can you first tell us a little bit about your community, Avon, the community that's involved in this legal action?
Sure. Our community is otherwise known as the beautiful Finger Lakes region in upstate New York. It is a fantastic area to live in. Contains trillions of gallons of water contained in those Finger Lakes that serves as drinking water source for hundreds of thousands of people. We have a very rich agricultural and tourism related industry. The lakes insulate the land and provide a perfect environment for growing grapes, which has turned us into a world-class wine destination for millions of people. We also have a very rich heritage, which is, we are on Haudenosaunee land. The Cayuga Nation is very nearby the town of Seneca Falls. And Seneca Falls, speaking of history, is the birthplace of American women's rights. So that's our community.
So can you share with us then what has been happening at the Seneca Meadows landfill?
So at the same time that we are celebrating our beautiful area, we also happen to be host to New York State's largest landfill called Seneca Meadows. And that landfill was slated to close when its permit expires in 2025. However, this Texas-based waste management company has instead applied to keep on bringing 6,000 tons of garbage into our community every single day for another 15 years. And so this landfill expansion has been met with broad statewide opposition because it is time for us to figure out a better solution for our solid waste management problem that we have in New York State.
And can you tell us specifically about how the landfill has impacted your community, the health and the safety of the people who are living there, businesses, property values, and of course, the beautiful environment that is the Finger Lakes region?
Yes, sadly, the birthplace of women's rights is now identified as a disadvantaged community, rife with lung cancer clusters that cannot be explained away by other common causes of lung cancer, like smoking or exposure to radon. Children in the nearby schools, when they're trying to take state assessments, are overwhelmed by noxious odors that make them ill, nauseous, have difficulty concentrating. The businesses in the area, large, more sustainable employers, are having difficulty retaining and recruiting employees because nobody wants to raise their family near this behemoth landfill. Housing in the area is characterized now by weak demand, high rates of poverty. We've got a lack of job growth and a vacancy rate that has increased nearly 7-fold since the last time this landfill expanded. And among its 5 neighboring counties, this county that is host to the landfill is the only one that has failed to rebound economically post-pandemic.
And so can you tell us how having the New York Green Amendment, which recognizes the right of all New Yorkers to clean water and air and a healthful environment, how has this amendment empowered your community's efforts to secure needed protections from what is happening with regards to this landfill?
Well, maybe I should explain a little bit about the lawsuit itself and how the Green Amendment fits into it. Um, the lawsuit itself, as Yvonne noted, is brought against the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, which is the state agency that has the responsibility to both protect the environment and to protect the public from environmental insults, but also has the responsibility to issue permits for facilities that, uh, such as the landfill, which potentially result in adverse environmental impacts. The lawsuit is also against Seneca Meadows Incorporated, which is the operator of the landfill. There are essentially two basic claims in the lawsuit. The first is that the odors in particular, which, as Yvonne has mentioned, substantially interfere with the community and the public's right to breathe clean air, uh, and the other emissions from the landfill, including uh, uh, along with those odors come chemicals. And the chemicals, of course, are in part the causation of the odors. So it can be hydrogen sulfide, it can be methyl mercaptan, it can be uh, uh, greenhouse gases, methane. The emissions from this landfill are off the charts, quite frankly, and as a result, and these emissions are they consist of both fugitive, what we call fugitive emissions, which are just the landfill gases that are generated by uh, disposing of garbage onto the surface. The garbage decomposes. The garbage is ultimately covered with some soil-like material, but it still generates these emissions underground. And so landfill gases are released through pipes. They are collected. They are, in some cases, flared off, meaning they're actually ignitable, so one can light a flare. And others are collected and converted into electric energy by using the methane component. But all of this results in air emissions, including fugitive emissions, which have significantly impacted the community. And I think that as Yvonne has mentioned, the area around the landfill has some of the worst health outcomes in the state of New York. All of this data that the state collects by both census tract and also by town and county show that the area around this landfill have some of the highest visits to emergency medical facilities and have some of the worst health outcomes of any place in the state of New York. We think it's not a coincidence that these adverse health effects are in the same community where New York's largest landfill is located. So the lawsuit itself focuses on uh, the Green Amendment, which in New York was adopted in 2021, following the process in New York for adopting a constitutional amendment is either you have a constitutional convention, which happens once every 20 years. There haven't been a lot of those with results in the past century, or an arduous process involving the adoption of the constitutional amendment by two successive legislative sessions, and then by a majority of the voters. So in 2021, in a state where hardly anybody can agree on anything, and a substantial divide between upstate and downstate on political and many other issues, 70% of the voters agreed that a fundamental right in New York should be every citizen's right to clean air, clean water, and a healthful environment. Uh, my own sense is that I think most people thought that was already a human right. But certainly when faced with a ballot which had that clear and concise constitutional amendment on it, more than 70% of the voters in New York voted for it. And so the Green Amendment was adopted in 2021. And the lawsuit alleges that the state of New York, by permitting this landfill to continue to operate, and Seneca Meadows, which operates the landfill with a tremendous amount of state involvement in it. There's a state monitor and so forth. Have violated the local citizens' rights to clean air and a healthful environment. The second component in the lawsuit sort of marries this 2021 Green Amendment with what is really an ancient legal concept, which is that no one has the right to use their property in a manner which substantially interferes with other people's use and enjoyment of their property. I mean, this is a right that goes back way before the Magna Carta. It goes back to Talmudic law. And the concept is called, in today's parlance, nuisance doctrine. You can have either a private or a public nuisance. We don't have to get into the details of that. But the legal concept is that no one has the right to use their property in a manner which substantially interferes with someone else's right to use their property. And that would include, for example, the school, that would include local residents, and that would include local businesses. And so what we've alleged is that the operation of this landfill and the emissions which sicken people in the community on a regular basis, prevent school children from being able to take their exams, prevent employers who have good businesses in the community from being able to attract new workers and executives to come and work at their facility, because no one wants to be living in this environment where there is no guarantee of clean air every day or a healthful environment. So that's the essence of the lawsuit.
So, Phil, particularly thinking about the Green Amendment arguments, because that's really what we're focusing on
Sure.
in this conversation, how has the state responded to your argument that this landfill, the way it's operating and the way the state is behaving and allowing it to operate, is interfering with the right of the community to clean water and air and a healthful environment? How has the state been reacting to that part of the argument?
Well, the state's response to our case is still to come, but it's easily predicted from the state's response in the other lawsuits, and there have been very few of them that have been brought to date under the Green Amendment. And I guess that I can say that it's been very disappointing, and it can be summarized as the state believes that there should be business as usual. In other words, the state's response has been, and this is through the New York State Attorney General, who represents and is required to represent the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation and Litigation. The state's response has been that despite the action of 70% of the voters, the Green Amendment doesn't change anything in New York. That the state DEC still has the authority delegated to it by the New York State Legislature to exercise its discretion in determining how to enforce New York's environmental laws, and when permits should be issued for particular operations, and the like, and that there is no remedy to the constitutional right that the voters have adopted. And our view very simply is that just stands on its head. The legal principle that I think is governed in this country and throughout the world for forever, which is where there's a right, there must be a remedy. And so our suit seeks to, despite the state's insistence that there's to be business as usual. Our suit seeks to enforce a remedy for the abuse, and it is abuse, that the people who live in this community have suffered as a result of the operation of this landfill, an abuse which is a violation of the constitutionally protected, it's in the New York State Bill of Rights, which is Article 1 of the New York State Constitution, Section 19. It is a fundamental right. It is that is enforceable on its own. It's not like the other constitutional issues like education. Everyone's entitled to an appropriate education, but that requires the legislature to appropriate funds. It requires a lot of different of legislative actions to implement it. This Bill of Rights provision is very simple. It says everyone has a constitutional right to clean air, clean water, and a healthful environment. And it doesn't take an action or further action by the legislature to implement that. It simply takes the judiciary to recognize these rights and to enforce them.
And so I think this final question is for you, Yvonne, but maybe it's to you both. I'd really like to know what is your goal? What is the goal of the community with this important legal action where you are raising up the New York Green Amendment as a primary focus in your legal arguments and your advocacy?
Well, I'll start, and then Phil, perhaps you could take it away after that. But I think, it is, as Phil said, pretty much a no-brainer, in my opinion, that people should, rightfully deserve to be able to enjoy their homes, their businesses, be successful, and not be worried about their health or the environment. And that's what the Green Amendment was designed to do, was to give every New Yorker that basic right. We shouldn't have even had to pass a new constitutional law that says that, but here we are, and now we have it, and it should be enforced. It should be upheld, and so that is our goal: is to not only protect the members of our community that have been suffering for far too long because of this landfill, but to protect others in New York State from similar assaults.
Yeah, I guess what I'll add to that is that the specifics of this litigation seek a declaratory judgment that both DEC, the State Department of Environmental Conservation, and Seneca Meadows, Inc. Have taken actions which deprive New Yorkers of clean air, clean water, and a healthful environment, and an injunction enjoining the State Department of Environmental Conservation from issuing a new permit to allow this landfill, which, as Yvonne noted, is going to reach its maximum permitted size sometime in 2025, but which now seeks to increase the size dramatically, increase the height by, it's already called Mount Trashmore, by almost 100 feet, and continue to operate for 15 more years to 2040. So that's the relief that we're seeking. And, as I've said, I'm going to just reiterate, we believe that this lawsuit is an example of demonstrating the human fundamental right to clean air, clean water, and a healthful environment.
So, Phil and Yvonne, I'd like to thank you so much for rising up as champions for the New York Green Amendment and the environmental rights of all New Yorkers. You and your community and your organizations are true heroes in this Green Amendment movement. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Maya.